This video is sponsored by my favorite website creator, Squarespace, the best place to go when you want to get a domain or create a beautiful website or an online store. I can almost quite not believe that I'm making this video. 19 years together with David. How did this happen? We were just kids when we met and somehow we chose each other and struck gold. I don't know how we were mature or sensible enough to understand already then that we were so good for each other, but somehow we did. And 19 years later, here we are, as much in love as those early days with, the afternoon cinema dates and drinking beer outside in a cold sunny Stockholm like we used to do. Back when we met, we were brand new adults, just shiny and new and without that many scuff marks or stains. Both David and I had each had one serious relationship before, so once we became a couple, we were each other's second relationship. I think that has importance. But looking back at who we were then, we have both of course changed so much. In some ways it's hard to think that we're even the same persons anymore. And our life, that has changed even more. Just such a complete metamorphosis that there is almost no part of our old teenage lives left in our adult life that we have built together. But question is, if we have changed as people and our life is completely different, question is, has our relationship changed as much? Is the relationship we have today, 19 years in, drastically different from those first tentative afternoon cinema dates? Well, sitting down to plan for this video, I actually didn't really know the answer to that because it's complex. So I think the answer is both yes and no. So let's take a closer look at this. How much or little does a 19-year romantic relationship change throughout the years? First of all, let's look at the statistics here. David and I have been together for 19 years. Out of those, we've lived together for 18 years. We've been engaged for 17 years and married for 0 years. Yes, we're still waiting for the right moment to sign those papers. Also, we've been working together, running our business for 13 years. And of course, working together and living together makes everything much more intense. So in this sense, we're not like the average relationship. Another statistic that will stand out is that I'm either proud or ashamed to say this, that out of these 19 years, these 6,935 days together, we've slept probably less than 25 nights apart. Again, intense. We're really rarely away from each other. Some other numbers that might be fun. We've lived in 12 apartments together, 3 countries, 4 cities. We've had 0 pets and 1 roommate for about a year. And let's talk about money. During our 19 years, we've been through so many different financial situations, from doing okay to not doing okay, to being comfortable, to being uncomfortable again. So all this is to say that our life together has gone through such massive changes, both geographically and financially, career-wise, emotionally and physically. 19 years is a long time. A lot can happen. Okay, one thing that has changed, and quite a lot during these 19 years, is our illusions and expectations and fears about our relationship. You know how it is, we are spoon-fed so many images on how a romantic relationship should be to be a successful relationship. And we both came into this so young with quite a few of those images and expectations. But turns out, to no one's surprise, that those illusions are just the Hollywood version of love, and not only unrealistic, but also often quite harmful. The opposites attract, keeping some mystery, often gender role washed version of a relationship, that's not for us. And actually, we very quickly realized this and started relaxing into the type of relationship that both of us wanted, because it very luckily turned out we wanted the same thing. Very close, very symbiotic, very gender neutral, with almost no mystery and almost no opposition. Friction-free partnership where we're both incredibly involved in each other's lives and dreams. That's what makes us happiest. And honestly, quite from the start of our relationship, once we realized that we were making a go out of it, we stopped even seeing it as 2 different lives and started talking about our life, singular. I think those images we're fed about what romantic love is and should be, it's not only that they're so missing the point, it's that they're also getting in the way of us identifying a beautiful, healthy relationship once we see one, because we have fears of not doing it the right way or not behaving like a couple should behave. Do you know what I mean? But that's just patriarchy manipulating us. We don't need the patriarchy to tell us when we're in a healthy relationship. We know. So now, even though a lot of people would definitely not want mine and David's type of intensely in your face, close type of relationship, we know it's what we want and that it clearly works for us. Not all happy relationships are created equal. One size does not fit all, etc. One thing that hasn't changed at all during all these years together is how we behave around each other on an everyday physical level. From day one, before we were even dating, when we just got to know each other as friends, because we were sort of in the same friend group back then, I always from the first day felt ridiculously relaxed physically around David. There is something about him that just puts people at ease. Like more or less every single time we walk around central London, David will be stopped for direction by lost tourists, like at least once, but sometimes 3-4 times in a day. It has even happened that it creates like a queue on the street of like tourists waiting for David to guide them, like where they need to go. And I'm not sure why, but he felt the same towards me from the start, like physically comfortable. We're like down to our core, relaxed and comfortable around each other, and we like routine touch each other constantly. And no matter what we've been going through these last 19 years, that cuddly aspect of our relationship has never changed. One thing that has changed is David's emotional expressiveness in our relationship when it comes to expressing negative emotions. One thing that hasn't changed is my emotional expressiveness. I think that has stayed more or less the same. Basically, I express negative emotions easily and abundantly, but David didn't in our early years. That's something that like he has picked up more and more from me. Now I know what you're thinking, that this feels very gendered, but actually I think it's much more down to our difference in upbringing. I come from a very verbal and emotionally expressive background, and David's come from a much more reserved and careful background. I'm still much more emotional than David, at least outwardly, but this difference between us, I'm quite sure it's like overall a good thing. We balance each other and influence each other, even though this difference can also, of course, sometimes be very annoying for both of us. Like, I see myself as emotional because I constantly compare myself with David, and David sees himself as emotionally calmer because he's comparing himself to me. If you ask me, this is one of the most wonderful and one of the most awful things about a long-term romantic relationship, that your personality is always seen in relation to the other person. If I had met a more emotional partner, I would be seen as the calm one. But because I'm with David, my identity and role is now that I'm the emotional one always. So we're constantly mirroring each other back to each other, and our differences inform how we look at our own personalities. If I had been single all this time, living by myself, I have no idea how I would have been looking at myself and my identity and my personality. Now, 19 years in, I look at myself with David's eyes. Mostly, that's a marvelous experience, but sometimes not so much. One thing that has changed is how we divide things. We're stone hard feminists and believe in complete equality, but what that equality means practically has changed. Working together, living together, having the same friends and interests, we've learned, like down to perfection almost, what our respective strengths and weaknesses are, and we've just leaned into it. So we're both equal in how hardworking we are, how much time and effort we put into work, into creative projects, and into the relationship. But what type of work or what type of effort we put in, that differs quite a lot. Like, our brains function like opposites. I've talked about this before, that I like one really long, really intense task, where David prefers a variety of many small tasks. So we're very happy when I get to like sit in that room back there writing on a novel, so a humongous project for hours and hours on end without distraction, while David in the same time takes care of 1,000 small things. So for us, the important thing is that we both feel that the other person is putting so much effort into our life, both career-wise, but also for the relationship and our home, that we couldn't care less who does what. I'm better at some things, David is better at others, so equal, but not the same. Okay, let's talk about arguments, the way we argue with each other. In some ways, our arguments have changed. Like I said, David is more openly expressing negative emotions, which, as you can imagine, will affect our arguments. Before, it would always be me who brought up our grievance, but after some years, David started complaining about me too. Good for him. And of course, good for me. But also, annoying. But in another sense, our arguments haven't changed at all, and I very much doubt they ever will. And it's because of our very different and very incompatible argumentation styles. When I try to solve an argument, I talk a lot and I wave my hands and I get into, on the one hand, on the other hand, explanations, and I express a lot of emotions. For David, this is way too intense. He is more, think before you speak, taking a step back type of person. So as you can imagine, this leads to complications. I mean, we know each other so well, like we know that we have very different ways of arguing and that we need to keep this in mind. But even though we know this, there's really not anything we can do about it. Like, we're just wired differently, and I don't think we'll ever be able to change or even modify our styles of arguing to become more similar. It's just the way it is, and one of those things to simply accept about each other and about ourselves. Another thing that has changed a bit is our conversations. Ever since those very early days when we first got to know each other, we've always talked a lot, an extreme amount of talking, and that hasn't changed at all. But I think one thing that has happened slowly over the years is that with every passing year, we just more and more perfecting our way of conversing with each other. It's like dancing. If you dance with the same partner for 19 years, of course you'll perfect your movements together. And David and I, we have the best talks. I mean, not always. Sometimes we're tired or distracted, or even worse, once in a red moon, we might even disagree on something, and I hate that. My favorite is when we agree completely, but each of us have more and more new takes on the same topic, so we're kind of egging each other on. We go for these 12K walks 3 times per week, and we'll save up on things that we've been thinking about or reading about and wait to talk about it until we're on one of our walks, so that we know that we'll get enough time to really excavate whatever it is, the anecdote or the observation or whatever, thoroughly. So it's my favorite thing in the world, walking with David. He sometimes makes notes about different observations on his notes app, so he won't forget to tell me about it. And I know some of you do that too, because when I showed David's notes on Instagram one time, a bunch of you sent me photos of your own notes of observations or stories to tell your partner. Cute, 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 cute. This is the romance we need right now, not the Hollywood bad boyness. The writing down things to tell your partner simply because you want to share all of your thoughts with them. That's what we need. Maybe the most important thing that hasn't changed, our willingness to let the other person change and grow and try new things. I know it's so common, and really it makes sense, even if it's sad, that partners start holding each other back the further along down the mortgage, children, career path you are. The more settled your life is, the more you have to lose. So if it's easy to encourage adventurism and growth and brave lifestyle changes in the other person earlier on in the relationship, obviously, for many people, it gets scarier and scarier. And I think this is the death of so many partnerships, this stagnation that happens when you stop pushing each other to grow and be daring and try new things. Luckily for me, that hasn't happened with David. This is one of the perks of being child-free, of course. Adventurous behavior is easier without a pram. But if anything, with me and David, I feel like we're getting worse. We're getting braver and more willing to try new things every year. I know for a fact that I would never live this life without David. I wouldn't have moved to London or started our influencer business, or then moved and moved and moved again 13 times, and now started a new career as a novelist. Maybe it's that thing, that je ne sais quoi quality of his, that makes tourists stop him for direction. That way he has of making me perfectly at ease, feeling perfectly safe and loved. A feeling of safety, it makes you bolder. Before I met him, I didn't feel safe, but the moment he walked into my life, it was like I exhaled completely and dropped my shoulders. And I just felt at peace. And now 19 years in, looking at the life we have created together, I have to say, I think it's a really lovely balance of safety and adventure. So even though so much has changed in our lives and how we behave and what we want, to our cores, deep down in our bone marrow, we're still the same kids as we were on those cold Stockholm cinema afternoon dates. People change a lot, but they also don't change that much. Don't you agree? Thank you so much for watching today. This was such a lovely video for me to make, and happy anniversary to David and me. 19 years, can you believe it? It's mad, it's like a whole life. So if you also like a romantic Stockholm moment, why not order a copy of my brand new novel, What a Time to Be Alive? Young, sad love in Stockholm, but could be moodier. I'll leave links with worldwide free shipping in the description and hope to see you next week already. Now, do you want to create a stunning website or launch your own blog? Squarespace has you covered with its latest innovations. First up, let's talk about their new design intelligence. Combining 20 years of design expertise with cutting-edge AI, this tool helps you unlock your creative potential, building a personalized, one-of-a-kind website that fits your needs. Squarespace also makes running an online store easier with Squarespace Payments. Onboarding is fast and you can start accepting payments in just a few minutes. Plus, it supports various popular payment options like Klarna, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and others, giving your customers payment flexibility. And for seamless social media integration, Squarespace allows you to connect your social media accounts in just a few clicks, whether you're embedding a feed or syncing your products directly to Instagram or Facebook. It's an effortless way to expand your reach and keep everything in sync. So what are you waiting for? Go get your free trial today at squarespace.com. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/jennymustard to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Okay, thank you so much for today. Bye bye bye.